Okay, well, welcome everybody, the Newport Storytellers, to those people in the room and those on Zoom. Today is World Storytelling Day, and we are celebrating here on the traditional lands of the Bunurong people, for whom we express our gratitude and we acknowledge that sovereignty was never ceded. So there's a few of us tonight in the room and some on Zoom, and I wasn't actually going to tell a story because there's so many of us, but I have a little story that was shared with me on Wednesday night. It's Ramadan, or Ramadan's just finishing, and here in Newport we have a large Lebanese Muslim population. And this is a story that one of the women in the choir told me as we were leaving. The choir, by the way, is directed by Alan Davies, who's a regular storyteller. Thank you, Alan. When choir finishes, it's quite dark outside. There's a car park with some lights, but even with the lights, it's dark. That's the theme for World Storytelling Day, light in the dark. So we're leaving the building, a group of women. We like to keep each other company. A lot of us are not young. And Mark, just for a little security, because of the lack of light in the dark. And as we're walking along, Margaret, one of the tenors, suddenly says to us, "Oh, something amazing happened to me." And we're like, "Oh, what, Margaret?" And she said, "Well, today I went to buy some petrol." Well, we all know about petrol at the moment. It's not an easy subject. We don't know where we're going with petrol. So she went and filled up her car and then went into the area where the cash registers are to pay. And the gentleman said to her, "Oh, you don't have to pay. Someone's already paid for you." And then he looked over her shoulder to another woman and said, "Oh, and you don't have to pay either. You've been paid for as well." Margaret said, "Well, who's paid for my petrol? Who's paid for it? Where?" And he said, "Well, that gentleman out there." And she looked out and there was a young man, quite dark, with a lovely beard, big brown eyes. She chased him down and she said, excuse me, but did you just pay for our petrol?" And he said, "Yes." She said, "Why?" And he said, "Because I wanted to." And during Ramadan, random acts of kindness are something that will occur. And Margaret realised that she had been the recipient of a random act of kindness. And if there is light to be found in the dark, I think it's often found in kindness. So that's my story. And now I'm going to hand over to Em, who will be hosting for the night, and I will just be keeping an eye and making sure that we notice you all on Zoom, because we can sometimes miss you if we're focusing on hosting. How are you going there, Em? Microphone's getting switched on?
I believe so.
And here she is.
Yes. Thank you so much. Give another round of applause to Jackie for that story, especially as she is always insistent on not telling stories at the storytelling event that she organises. It's pretty lucky for us to actually hear a story from her. I'm going to do the rest of the hosting for tonight, and because we have a long lineup, I've got everyone's names written down, and what I will do is I will announce who's going to go next prior to the storytellers. So I'm going to get Rohini to tell in a moment, because Rohini and Jackie and I had a lovely time telling stories at the Newport Bush Dance on Sunday. It was a wonderful event and we all had a delightful time. And I know Rohini needs to go off soon. So we'll do her first. And then after Rohini, Peter, you are going to tell. So I'm going to keep doing that. When Peter comes up, I'll announce who the next person is and so on and so on. Otherwise, you'll forget and we'll all have a big panic and we won't like that at all. So, Rohini, are you ready to tell us a story for World Storytelling Day?
Yes. Thank you so much.
Excellent.
This is a story called Sylvester and the Magic Pebble, and it's a book by William Steig. And because of the theme, that's the story I could think of. So here goes. Once upon a time, there was a family. It was a donkey family. There was Mama Donkey and Papa Donkey and their darling baby donkey, Sylvester. Sylvester loved odd things. He had a strange love for pebbles, and he had a huge collection of all kinds of pebbles. Shiny pebbles, dull pebbles, sharp pebbles, differently shaped pebbles. He was always on the lookout for pebbles. And one day, as he was looking and hunting for pebbles, he saw this really strange, shiny red pebble. He had never seen anything like that. And he quickly jumped and grabbed the pebble. Now, it was a very dull and gloomy day, and it was beginning to rain. And Sylvester did not like rainy days. So the moment he grabbed that shiny red pebble, he looked at the sky and said, "Oh, I wish it did not rain." And then suddenly, it stopped raining. It did not gradually stop raining. It just ceased. Sylvester looked at the pebble in his hoof and thought, this could be connected. So he tried something. He looked at the pebble, he held it and said, "I wish it starts raining." And at once, the sky got black and it began pelting down. Sylvester was amazed, delighted. His heart started racing. He had just found a magic pebble. At once, he grabbed the pebble and said, "I wish the sun is out." And at once the sun was out. Sylvester dropped the pebble and jumped up and down and said, "Oh, I wish it started raining," but it didn't. And so he realized that he had to be holding the pebble to be able to make the wish. He was so happy. He jumped up and down, thinking all the things that he could wish for, thinking about all the things that he could wish for his mum and his dad and his family, and hopping happily, carrying the pebble in his hoofs, he started running back home. And as he was running and thinking about all the wonderful things he wished for, he just saw something strange. He saw something moving, and then he was face to face with a lion. The lion looked at Sylvester. The lion was drooling. The lion had this hungry look, and the lion wanted to leap and attack. Now, if Sylvester was thinking properly, he could have wished that the lion disappeared. He could have wished that he would disappear and be at home with his mom and dad, but Sylvester wasn't thinking. He could have wished for anything. He had that magic pebble with him, but Sylvester, in a state of panic, said, "Oh, I wish I was a rock." And at once, Sylvester turned into a rock. The lion looked around and said, "Wow, strange. I could swear I saw a donkey a minute ago." The lion went and sniffed deeply. Maybe I'm getting old. And the lion went away from there. The pebble lay right next to the rock. And Sylvester was shouting from inside that rock, "Oh, I wish I were a donkey again. Oh, I wish I were a donkey again." But the pebble was not on Sylvester. It was by Sylvester's side, and he just stayed there as a rock. Now, back at home, Mum and Dad Donkey were getting worried. It was quite late, and Sylvester was usually back home by this time. So they started pacing up and down, wondering where Sylvester was, and pushing away all those thoughts about maybe something bad has happened to him. And they wished and wished that he were back home, but that did not happen. And soon a search party was formed. They went to the police. All the other animals in the locality started looking for Sylvester, but they just couldn't find him. Days went by, and eventually the search was given up. Mum and Dad Donkey thought that something awful has happened to their angel boy, and it broke their heart. But life has to go on. They wished that their angel was fine, and they went on with a very, very heavy heart. And every day wishing that their little donkey boy is fine. They did not know that their little son was right next to their house. But One day, when Mummy Donkey was very, very, very sad, Daddy Donkey said, listen, we have to do something. Sylvester loved adventure. Sylvester loved the outdoors. Let's go outside. Let's have a picnic. And so he dragged Mummy and they went and sat by the rock. The same rock that was Sylvester. Now, in all these months, Sylvester had fallen asleep because, as a rock, that's what he thought he could be best at. But the moment he sensed his parents' presence, he felt a strange kind of energy. And then Mummy Donkey's back was hurting, so she said, I may as well sit on the rock. And she sat on the rock. The moment Sylvester felt his mum's warmth on him, Sylvester was wide awake and screaming from inside, Mum, Dad, it's me, it's me. Of course, Mum and Dad couldn't hear him. Just then, they lay out all their food and Dad was beginning to pour some tea for Mum when he spotted that strange-looking red pebble. He picked it up and said, oh, what a different-looking pebble. A Sylvester would have loved it. I think I should take it home and put it in his collection. And then Mum said, you know, Dad, I have this strange feeling that Sylvester is somewhere close by and he can hear us. Oh, don't you wish, Dad, that Sylvester was here at this very minute? Dad looked at Mum and said, what a question, of course. And he kept the pebble on Sylvester the rock. And from inside, Sylvester was shouting, it's me, Mum, Dad, it's me. He had forgotten that the pebble was now resting on him. And then he shouted with all his might from inside, oh, I wish I was myself again. And whoosh, he was himself again. Mum and Dad, as you can imagine, were shocked, excited, confused, elated. There were lots and lots of hugs and cuddles, and it was beginning to get dark. But right there was so much light in that embrace. There was so much to talk about. And as the happy little family went back home, Daddy took that pebble and locked it up somewhere for another day. So that's the end of my story, everyone. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Rohini. That was fantastic and a wonderful way for us to kick off our online contributions for World Storytelling Day. Peter, I am looking over at you, and after Peter, we're going to have Barbara, who's joining us all the way from Germany. Now, Peter has a prop. I'm a big fan of props. I'm a magician, but normally that means I've got colourful props. I've got comforting props, familiar props. You have a very uncomforting and unfamiliar prop. You may want to explain what it is you've got and why.
Okay, try
right,
that.
thank you. Am I on? Hello. Hi, everyone. First of all, to David in Yorkshire. He did a song last time, and it was the second time I've heard that song, and I'd heard it a week before for the very first time, sung by Andy Irvine. And I couldn't make out a word he was saying, but David, you have revealed all, so thank you very much for that. Now, this one is it's a poem. It's set in the Mallee part of Australia, up around Mildura, Swan Hill, where my parents came from. My mum came from Anangatang, which is a place everyone should visit at least once in their life. And it's come about because when I was starting off in the folk scene, there are a lot of songs in Australia about shearers and drovers and how good they are, but there weren't very many songs and poems about Victoria. So I wrote this one in honour of my parents up in the Mallee. It does mention hitting a paddy melon with a sledgehammer. And the paddy melon is not the cute little marsupial small kangaroo type thing in this case. It's a type of noxious weed imported from Africa. It looks like a small melon and it's spiky, and they're terribly fragile. Now, I hope I can remember it. The shearers in the bar were bragging of the great deeds they'd all done. When it all came down to tin tacks, it seemed they all could shear the ton. And as they heard each other's yarns and said they could better them by far, no one heeded the lone swaggy, brooding darkly at the end of the bar. Now, for all the years he'd tramped about getting work where'er he could, this bloke had always suffered from shearers and their yarns of how they're so good. So now as he listened to their talk, he was burning up inside, and to bring him down a peg or two he did there and then decide. Now, the biggest and ugliest shearer was a bloke called Bluey Spon, and he chanced to remember the swaggy from a station he'd once been on, and he recalled him as a duffer who was troubled to open a gate. So with a wink to the rest of his cronies, he yells, "Well, if it isn't Stinky, me old mate." Now, as Stinky was at the time engrossed in the foulest schemes, the shearer blurting out his name must have upset him in his dreams, because he still gave way beneath him, and with a little cry of dismay, he disappeared from the sight of all and to the ashtrays found his way. So amid much coughing and spluttering, Stinky casually regained his seat, and with as much composure as he could muster, this shearer he then did greet. Why, it's Rupert Spawn, I do declare. Just fancy meeting you here." And to a chorus of laughs from the shearers, he proceeded to spill his glass of beer. "Get over with you," the barmaid cried. "Leave the poor little bugger alone." "Well, if you don't mind, miss," the swaggy said, "I can handle this on my own. Now, you shearers think you're pretty smart, though far be it from me to say, but there's something I think I can beat you at, that is, if you're willing to play." Well, Bluey damn near cacked himself, and his sides near split apart from laughing at this little bloke who seemed to be so flaming smart. So when he finally caught his breath and eased his face of its toothless grin, he says, "I'll take you on at anything, mate, and here's 10 quid to say I win." Well, this caught Stinky out a bit, I guess it's needless to say, because there wasn't a game on all the earth that the silly bugger could play. But he decided in this time of stress that he'd better play it cool, and he says, "I'll take you on at croquet, mate, though I don't suppose you know the rules." Now, when it came to reckoning and all was said and done, when you compared their knowledges of croquet, they matched up none to none. But Bluey opened up his trap and said, "I haven't got a clue." So Stinky sighed, "We'll need an umpy. I guess I'll just have to do." Well, they assembled then outside the pub and the croquet course was set. But Stinky wouldn't strike a blow till all the rules were met. And as mallets and croquet balls weren't bountiful up the bush, bear with me, they had to use dried paddy melons with sledgehammers to give them a push. They tossed a coin and Bluey won, and he elected thence to bat. He thought he could give the stick a shake if he had a decent whack. So he lifted high his hammer and he swung through nice and clean, to be lost in a great big cloud of dust, rising where the ball had been. "To break the ball is not allowed," old Stinky said with glee, "and Rule 27 clearly states that's 50 points to me." And learning thus from Bluey's blue, he gently tapped his ball, but it stopped well short of its goal, the peg. In fact, it hardly moved at all. Well, the game went on in likewise style through that weary afternoon. And though Stinky's ball never moved that much, his lead had grown and grown, because Bluey always made mistakes whenever he hit the ball, but because he didn't know the rules, but Stinky knew them all. Well, at last the poor shearer had had enough and had to admit defeat. This was certainly not a game at which Stinky he could beat. And when the score was tallied up, the swaggy had clearly won, with a total of 3,572 to the shearer's 21. Thank you. The end.
Don't put your hands up, we can see you. We know exactly where you are. No, you haven't listened yet. Very loud and it's very, very strange. That'll be better. Now you can all hear. Barbara, joining us from Germany, what have you got to show us today?
A little story. You know, my English is not so good, but I give my very best. Once upon a time, a king had 2 sons. He was old and he felt that he would die soon. And he always ruled gently and kindly and justly. And in doing so, he had found of the people of his country. He wanted to name one of his two sons heir to the throne. However, he wanted to make sure that the future king was also wise, so he gave the two a task. You should get me something with the 5 silver pieces that I give you by the evening, with which you can fill the great king's hall. Und als am nächsten Tag die Sonne aufging, da machte sich the eldest son auf und ging aus dem Schloss hinaus. Er kam an ein großes Feld vorbei. There was sugarcane, and the workers, the son asked the workers to bring this to the king's. And so Wagen um Wagen brachte alles in das große Schloss. Und als am Nachmittag alle Wagen gefahren waren, there was the sugar cane in the great hall. And the son go to his father and says, I have fulfilled your tasks. I'm the new king. You haven't waited to my brother. Aber der König sagte, I'm waiting for your brother. It's not evening yet. Es war schon spät am Abend, als the youngest came to the hall. What will he do? Sofort befahl er, das ganze Stroh Wagen um Wagen aus der Halle zu bringen. Er gab nicht eher Ruhe, bis die ganze Halle leer. And then he took a big candle in the middle of the hall. And da, in diesem Moment, erfüllte die ganze Halle mit Licht. And all looked to each other, and they saw the light was in their eyes. Und sie blickten sich an, and the light was reflected. And the king said, You are my successor. Dein Bruder hat die ganze Halle mit unnützem Zeug gefüllt. Du aber hast sie mit wenig gefüllt. You have give the people what they need, the warmth and the light.
That was beautiful, Barbara, and one of my favourite stories. Thank you so much for sharing it. And I noticed not only do you have wonderful props of pictures, but just behind your head is the logo for World Storytelling Day.
Yes.
If our tech people can move Barbara back in so she can be seen, we can see the logo of World Storytelling just behind her. There, she's holding it even closer up. It's an excellent, excellent logo. It's all around the world. And also up at the back to your left, there is a portrait of who I can only presume is Sylvester the donkey. So you've really got everything covered tonight, Barbara. All right, we're going to move back into our in-person tellers, and Mark has got something to share. And after that, we're going to go across to you, Kevin. So this is your warning ahead of that. Mark, what have you got to share with us this evening?
I've got a story. So, yes, we've just been reminded of the existence of Sylvester, and now I'm going to take you back to a story with magic in it. So we seem to be having themes running tonight. This is a very short and daft story, and it's called Light and Dark. Once upon a time, the world was full of light. I mean, really full of light. There was so much light everywhere that everyone had to go around squinting hard the whole time. They couldn't really see where they were going and kept bumping into things and each other. It was really hard to get around. Well, one day, a young person by the name of Joe was stumbling along as usual when, ouch, they tripped over something lying on the path. What was that, they thought, and bent down to pick it up. Of course, what with all the light around the place, it was hard to see what it was. So Joe started rubbing it to get an idea of its shape. Suddenly, poof, a smoky, swirling, cloudy form appeared. "Hello," came a deep voice. "I am the genie of the lamp, summoned to grant your wishes." "Hey, great," said Joe, who had heard about this kind of thing. "Can you do something about all this light? Get rid of it, maybe?" "Certainly," said the genie. He clapped his hands, and straight away all the light vanished, and everything was pitch black. "No," cried Joe, "that's not what I meant at all. Bring it back at once." "Well, if you insist," said the genie, sighing to himself. He clapped his hands again, and straight away the light came back, as bright as before. "Oh dear," groaned Joe, "how stupid was that? Oh, and I've just realised that, of course, you genies, you always grant 3 wishes, and I've wasted 2 of them. I need to think carefully about this next one." Ah, replied the genie in his proper voice. You're thinking of your average 3-wish genie. I'm not one of those. I'm a 5-wish genie. Because you see, he was a very generous-minded genie. "Oh, that's a relief," said Joe. Okay, let's see. Light is bad. Dark is bad. How about halfway in between? Can you make everything grey, please?" Once more the genie clapped his hands, and straight away everything was an indescribably dull shade of grey. "Well, that's no good," said Joe. "That hasn't helped at all." "You're not very good at this, are you?" remarked the genie. Because you see, as well as being generous-minded, he could also be quite sardonic. "Have another go, why don't you?" "Let me think," said Joe. "I want to be able to tell where things are and where they aren't. I know. Make all the objects be bright enough to see, but not so bright they fill the gaps between them. So things are light, but space is dark." "I don't know," said the genie. "That's a bit vague, but I'll see what I can do. I am an all-powerful genie after all." Because, you see, as well as being generous-minded and sardonic, he was also rather full of himself. Once more he clapped his hands, and straight away everything appeared in perfect clarity. "Wow," cried Joe, that's amazing. I never realised how wonderful the world could look. Thank you so very, very much, Mr. Genie." The genie looked very pleased with himself and asked, "Now, what would you like for your final wish?" Joe thought for a second and then said, Everything looks so marvellous now that I really can't think of anything else I would like. So how about you use the last wish? What would you like?" "Well, that's very thoughtful of you, young Joe," replied the genie. "You know, I've been doing this job for a very long time now, and I'm a bit tired of the whole thing." Because, you see, as well as being generous-minded and sardonic and full of himself, he was actually quite old, even for a genie. "So if it's all the same to you, I'd quite like to retire to my magic lantern and put my feet up for a nice long rest. and never have to grant people's wishes ever again. Yes, said Joe, that sounds like an excellent idea, and a well-deserved one. Go right ahead. Thank you, said the genie. Enjoy your world of light and dark. And with that, he clapped his hands a final time, and straight away he disappeared back into his lamp. And so Joe, and everyone else for that matter, came to realise that we can really only appreciate light when there is dark to compare it against. Oh, and by the way, if you ever come across a lamp and you try rubbing it, you'll probably find that nothing happens. And if you hold it up to your ear and you think you can hear a genie snoring gently, well, who am I to say whether you're imagining it or not? Thank you.
Ah, that was excellent. Thank you so much for sharing that story. Not only a Paqua myth about how light and dark came to be, but why there's no genies in any of the lamps that I'm rubbing. That's exactly. It's fantastic. All right, we're going to go across to Kevin, who's joining us over in the UK, and then after that, it's probably going to be me before we take a little break. But before I throw to Kevin, I've seen that Dee and Priti and Shilpa have all joined us online. Lovely to see you all joining us for World Storytelling Day. If you want to tell a story, put it in the chat, and if we can squeeze you in, we will. But no promises. You need just as many story listeners as you need storytellers anyway. Kevin, what have you got to share with us today?
Oh, well, okay, so I realised that today is the equinox, and so we're at the point where light and dark are equal for today. Well, around about 2:47 in the UK anyway. That's the equinox here. So I thought that was worth mentioning. And I've got just a couple of poems which I found, which well, I actually like them, and I thought I'd read these. The first one is by Tess Gallagher, who was married to brain dead. Shortcuts. Raymond Carver. And so, and she wrote this after the passing of Raymond Carver, and it's called Yes. And it says, now we are like that flat cone of sand in the garden of the Silver Pavilion in Kyoto, designed to appear only in moonlight. Do you want me to mourn? Do you want me to wear black? Or like moonlight on whitest sand, to use your dark, to gleam, to shimmer? I gleam, I mourn. So that's that one. And the second one, which is also quite short, is written by Robert Frost, who was known in Ledbury as a Dimmock poet. Dimmock is just down the road, and he lived quite close to here. And this one's about autumn, really, and it says, nothing gold can stay. Nature's first green is gold, her hardest hue to hold. Her early leaf's a flower, but only so an hour. Then leaf subsides to leaf, so Eden sank to grief. So dawn goes down today, nothing gold can stay. And that's it. That's me.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Kevin. A lovely addition of poetry to our evening. And now it's going to be my turn, because we're going to take a little break. And when I say a little break, I mean like a 2-minute break that will stretch to 3 minutes, maybe 4 if you're lucky. Enough time to get a cup of tea and a chocolate teddy bear if you're here. I'm afraid if you're joining us online, you can only get a chocolate teddy bear if there's one in the kitchen. And then we'll come back for the second half. Oh, Jill's already prepared. She doesn't even need a break. Why wasn't I thinking like that? The rest of us will have to go get a cup of tea in a moment. But I'm going to tell my story, which is one of my favourite stories, which I say for all my stories, admittedly. But this is one of my favourite Paqua stories. I already had one Paqua story, a bit more sardonic Paqua story than the one I'm probably going to tell. But a how and why story, a myth that explains why the world is the way that it is. Why do we here in Australia, who speak English, call it a French word? I don't know, but that's not what this story is about. This story is about bats and darkness. But we're going to start with a bit of a chant. So I want you to tap your laps, and I am going to speak in rhythm. So if you can't hear it, you can join online. Excellent. All right, ready? Repeat after me. In the beginning. In the beginning. Way back. Way, way back. Way, way, way back. There was a bang. A big bang. A really big bang. All right, so on the count of three, to start the universe, we need to have a really big bang. Are you ready? 1, 2, 3. Bang! The universe began, and all the world was always bathed in light all the time. There was nothing except day. The sun shone at all hours, at all minutes. There was no rest from all that light. And that was pretty good for some, but not so great for others. It was hard to sleep. It was hard to keep cool. It was hard to rest, hard to find food. And so the Creator decided that something needed to be done about this. So the Creator created this brand new, fangled, strange, mysterious thing called darkness. But then the Creator had to work out who was going to be the caretaker of darkness. Couldn't just give it to anyone. That could end in disaster. So after a great deal of thinking, the Creator decided the best caretaker for darkness would be the moon. So the Creator put all the darkness, squished it all up and placed it nice and tight inside a basket. But now, how to get this basket of darkness all the way up to the moon? That was a conundrum. So the Creator had a bit of a think about who could take it. Or could give it to Fox. Fox is swift. Fox is cunning. Fox is also a bit accustomed to getting distracted and leaving things behind, so probably not the best to do. Oh, Owl can fly, that's pretty good. Owl is strong, but Owl does think very much of himself. He probably thinks he's too mighty, too wise to worry about such a little errand as delivering this basket. Oh, I know. Someone who is cunning and careful and swift and silent, I'll give it to Bat. So the Creator asked Bat to take the basket of darkness, and of course she said yes. So she grabbed that basket with her claws and flapped and flapped and flew, rise around the world so she could get to the other side where the moon was, and then fly up into the sky to the moon itself. And as she flapped and flew, when she got hungry or tired, she placed the basket somewhere nice and safe and go get a snack or have a little rest under a tree, and then pick up the basket again and flap and fly around the earth towards the moon. And when she got tired, she'd take another rest, and then she'd pick up the basket and flap and fly towards the moon. And on one particular occasion, as she was flapping and flying towards the moon, she placed the basket under a tree and went off to get a snack. It's hungry work taking the darkness all the way up to the moon. And as she left it under the tree, a bunch of other animals came along and were curious as to what could be in this mysterious basket left under a tree. Any suggestions of what animal might be coming to examine and explore, curious at this basket? Sorry? Fox. Well, of course, Fox had heard whisperings that there might be an important task coming along, and so had a bit of a snuffle. I was curious. There's probably something very important, and probably something that I should take. In Bandicoot, well, Bandicoot desperately needed somewhere to sleep. I mean, all this bright light all the time, somewhere a little bit covered. That'd be really helpful. And so came across, and Bear was starving, and baskets normally herald food, so maybe there was something inside. And more animals joined Fox and Bandicoot and Bear, getting closer and closer, and all decided to see what was inside this basket. And just as they lifted the lid off the basket, Bat flew back and cried, "No!" It was too late. The darkness came pouring out faster and faster and faster. So she flapped and wings as fast as she could, desperate to beat that darkness back into the basket. But it just wouldn't work. So she called her friends, she called her family, and they all flapped and flew, desperate to push that darkness back into the basket. And do you know what? They never did. No matter how much they flapped and flew, they could not get that dark back in the basket. And that could be a very sad end to the story, except every night, to this day, right around the world, from Sierra Leone, where this story comes, all the way to here in Australia, where I'm telling it right now, bats wake up at dusk and flap and fly, trying to beat that darkness back into the baskets. Because we don't need just light, and we don't need just darkness. We need both. and bats are doing their very best to make sure we get a balance. So that is my story to you all for World Storytelling Day. We're going to have a 3-minute break. It'll go for 4 minutes, maybe 5 at a stretch. Get yourself a cup of tea or have another one if you're Jill. We'll come back and do some more storytelling in a few minutes. We will see you soon. Welcome back from your 2-minute break that ran for 3 minutes, maybe 4 at a stretch. I hope you bought a cup of tea and a chocolate biscuit or biscuit of your choice. We're now going to continue our storytelling for tonight for World Storytelling Day. And we're going to do an online telling, but it's not someone who's joining us on Zoom. It's going to be Rosani, I should say, who wasn't able to come, but she did film a video for us. So I'm going to, pass over in a figurative sense rather than literal sense to our tech team. We're going to bring up her video so she can share with us for World Storytelling Day, not only at a distance, but at a distance through time as well, the power of technology.
Happy Friday. Hi, Newport Storyteller community. Sorry I couldn't make it today. I got something important, but I can still be with you in this virtual setting. So today I'm gonna read a poem. Our theme is light in the dark. So there's a poem that little bit reflects on the same topic. So my poem topic is Yes, my dear, you should run. I'm starting. Neither closing your eyes can ever erase any fact, nor shutting your ear can do it either. Fear of stepping ahead will always set you back and will suck all your hopes forever and ever. Feel it. Feel it deep down. There is something running. Maybe try to reflect on your priceless feeling. So come on, don't ever try to mask it on. Open your eyes, listen to the tune, and just pass it on, just pass it on. Don't count how many days your dreams were messed up from the beginning. Don't count how many of them were smashed from the starting. Just remember that world does not want to learn the story of night, but of the shining sun. So let the world celebrate every morning, but remember to measure all those gaps. You should run. Yes, my dear, you should always run. Thank you. Bye, everyone.
There we go, because no point in me talking over the story, that ruins the whole experience. We are really grateful that Rosani was able to share with us power of technology. We were reflecting before we started, actually, Jackie, Adrian, and Darren and I, that we've been doing hybrid storytelling at the Newport Storytellers since 2021, and been doing it every month since 2022 that we run. So that's pretty consistent, and I must say, I know there are lots of groups that haven't found hybrid working, but I'm immensely grateful because it means we get to have videos from those that can come and have so many people join us from overseas and around the country, which really makes this World Storytelling Day in a real sense rather than just a figurative sense. But we're going to go right back here in the space here in the Mechanics Hall in Newport. Anneleise has got a story. I've got a microphone for you.
Well, this is a story about two periods in Australia's history, and it's called The Song of the Goldfinch. It's September 2020 in Melbourne. The latest COVID lockdown has lasted since July with no end in sight, and we're all struggling. I try to distract myself by reading the diary of immigrant Arthur Reed, written on board the steamship SS Great Britain in 1852. It's 2 long months since I left the quay at Liverpool to seek a new life in Melbourne. I disliked this new ironclad ship at first, having the seasickness very strongly, but after a few days it settled. My companions Tom and Agnes have coped admirably too. Not so for those who sadly died of typhus en route and were buried at sea. I have formed an understanding with a young woman, Tilly, who hopes to find employ tutoring children of families made wealthy from the gold rush. Saturday, 16th of October. It is strange that we came from the British summer only to have a second summer here in the southern hemisphere. Tilly, Tom, Agnes and I took the air as we sailed along Victoria's coastline today. The captain informed us that the new quarantine station at Point Nepean is established, but not yet open. Therefore, SS Great Britain will sail directly to Melbourne, where ox-driven carts will be provided for our belongings. Tilly has fashioned a gown to wear on arrival and looks very well. She will make a fine wife and mother. Back in 2020 Melbourne, I take a break from reading Arthur's diary to go out and buy food. It's still allowed under lockdown rules, but the police are patrolling everywhere. The two cops that flagged me down are straight out of Central Casting. One has an open, friendly face, while the other looks mean and sinister. Bad cop mimes, opening the window, and a thick cloak of dismay settles over me.
Morning, madam. Can I see your driver's licence? I assume you're aware of the COVID-19 restrictions in state of Victoria. You can only leave your home for 4 reasons, which are...
He drones on while I fish my licence out of my handbag and hand over the piece of plastic with its picture of a smiling woman for another life.
Madam, can you remove your mask so we can check this is you?
Bad cop peers at the licence and then at me. I wouldn't blame him if he saw no resemblance between the photo and the raggy-haired ghost in the driver's seat. He's just about to say something when a low-slung BMW roars towards us, music booming, and men inside wearing back-to-front baseball caps. Bad cop flags it down, and I'm left with good cop.
How are you going today, then?
I've just been to the supermarket. I'm driving home along the coast road to get a good look at the sea. It makes me feel calmer somehow.
Oh, yes, me too. I always find looking at the sea and the sky makes me feel better. Those cruiser liners, still quarantined out there in the bay. It's been days now, poor buggers.
Yeah, full of sick people. Oh, it doesn't bear thinking about.
These are tough times, aren't they? I can see you're struggling a bit. Have you thought about meditation? Every day before I start my shift, I listen to a meditation app. Find it soothing. I sprinkle lavender oil on my uniform too. That's very calming. Might be worth a go. Oh, look over there. There's some goldfinch hopping around. They symbolise good luck and prosperity, you know. Perhaps it's a sign that all of this will be over soon. Light at the end of this very dark tunnel, eh? Anyway, off you go. Take care now.
He walks away, leaving me intrigued at the idea of a cop who meditates and smells of lavender oil. The goldfinch glitters in the light. Its twittering song sounds joyous, and for a happy moment I'm transfixed. Back home, I rinse my shoes in the trough of disinfectant by the back door, hang up my mask to air in the sun. Wearing sterile disposable gloves, I painstakingly unpack and disinfect the shopping. Then I make an industrial strength coffee and turn again to Arthur Reed's diary. Saturday, 23rd of October, 1852. After a short spell at anchor in Hobson's Bay, we finally docked. The quay was full of people from Melbourne and surrounds, keen to see this strange new ship arrive. I hear that they will be charged 1 shilling to tour SS Great Britain and see all its modern conveniences. I found an ox cart easily enough and loaded Tilly, Tom, Agnes and our trunks on it. Monday, 25th of October. The portable iron houses brought with us on the ship were unloaded, ready for us to build our new abodes. The iron panels designed for easy assembly allowed us to build a simple cottage very quickly. I'm sorry to say, though, that many of the men made haste to the goldfields, leaving their women and children behind. Tuesday, 26th of October. Tom and Agnes love it here and have settled well. It's a miracle that they survived the voyage. As dawn broke, Tilly and I decided to let them both out of their cage. I knew it was a good idea to transport a pair of goldfinches with me, bringing good luck and prosperity to my new life in the colonies. Tom and Agnes sat twittering on a branch as the sun rose, flooding our little domain with light. Then they started singing their cheerful little song. There we go.
Oh, thank you so much, Mark and Anneleise. That was wonderful. And that not only was there 2 speaking parts, there was a bird part too, and you even planned that. So that's amazing. Excellent. All right. Now, I realised, because there were the 2 of you, and it was very exciting to have 2 people telling, that I forgot to pre-warn Jill Webster that she'd be next. But given that she was pre-ready with a cup of tea before the break, I have a sneaky suspicion she is already ready, even though I have not told her.
I'm good. Can you hear me though?
Excellent.
That's the question. Have
Yes,
I managed without my glasses to hit the? Yes, I can see.
Yes.
I can. Excellent. Hello, everybody. And I was kind of hoping I was going to go next because my story's a bit birdish as well, so it sort of fits as well. I'm here in Darug country in the Blue Mountains of New South Wales. Happy World Storytelling Day, everybody. And I have an Australian Kamishibai story today. It's called Go and Keep on Going. Bill had not always been a grumpy old man. No, he had once been a young man with merely grumpy tendencies. That is, until the cockatoos came. And then. His wife, Mary, well, she thought that they were... She thought that those cockatoos were only after a feed. But Bill knew better. Bill knew that they were the juvenile delinquents of the avian world, and any time he caught a cockatoo in his garden, he would shake his fist at it and shout, "Go! And keep on going! Rack, rack, rack!" They would go, but week after week, those cockatoos would come right back to destroy his children's trampoline. Go and keep on going! Rack, rack, rack! Month after month, to make a terrible mess of the washing. Go and keep on going! Rack, rack, rack! Year after year, even when Bill thought he'd sort of solved at least part of the problem by putting a very expensive net over his precious plum tree, all those cheeky cockatoos would simply have a go at the lemon tree. Now, they didn't seem to eat the citrus fruits at all, but they relished the carpet of destruction, the detritus they left covering Bill's carefully maintained lawn. Ooh. Now, it was really in retirement when Bill had the time and the energy to truly devote to this thing with the cockatoos. There had been battles over the years, but now it was war. Mary, who had been fighting some battles of her own these last couple of years, sometimes at the dusk when Bill was there poring over his plans and schemes with these pesky cockatoos in mind, she would look up at them and say, "You know, Bill, I know they're annoying, but you've kind of almost got to admire them, don't you?" But what? Admire cockatoos? Well, really, when you think about it, Bill, they're clever, they're resourceful, they're resilient, and you've got to admit they are quite a beautiful bird. Clever, resourceful, resilient. They are a menace. They are mean. They are malicious, destructive, despicable. I can't believe you could say such a thing. Beautiful? Not one bit. You know, Bill, you can feel two things at the same time. Sometimes even more. It is entirely possible for you to be really annoyed at something and still love it at the same time. But Bill felt exactly one thing, and it was not an abiding love of the cockatoos. And so he set to work. His latest scheme was to attach very expensive anti-roosting spikes to every available flat surface he could find. He got up early one morning and staple gunned the lot to every single surface. There, he said, there we are, Mary. That'll get 'em. Now we can finally have some peace and quiet. No more of these nasty birds squawking overhead every night at dusk. Peace and quiet. And you know, for a brief moment, it was quiet. Bill did not realise that was because the cockatoos had their beaks full. They realised that these anti-roosting spikes made a really good nesting material, and they got at every single piece, removing them one by one. When Bill found out what had happened, he was furious. He raced to the garden shed, wheeled out his high-pressure water washer, clicked it over to the hose, turned it on, and took it over to the trees, where he blasted those cockatoos with such fury, such terrible, terrible fury. It was awful to behold. He shocked the cockatoos. Rock, rock, rock. He shocked Mary. Truth be told, he even shocked himself. I'm sorry, Mary. I'm sorry, Mary. I'm so sorry. I just wanted you to have some peace and some quiet, Mary. I'm trying to fix things for you, Mary. I'm trying to get you peace and quiet. I want to fix everything. I know, Bill. I know. But too soon, Bill learnt that there's such a thing as too much peace and too much quiet. And that there are some things that can't be fixed. And in the weeks and the months that followed, Bill found himself feeling lost in his own backyard. Like he had nothing left to fix. Like he didn't know what to do. His children, who are now adults, were very worried about him. They visited regularly and tried to encourage him to get out and about. Maybe join the local lawn bowling club that was just up the street. Now, at that suggestion, Bill couldn't remember what he'd said, if he'd shrugged his shoulders or just not said no clearly enough, but his children took that as close to a yes And very enthusiastically, they bought him the equipment, they bought him the clothing, and they signed him up to beginners' classes at the local bowling club. It looked ridiculous. He felt ridiculous. He was ridiculous. And as he sat once more, lost at home, he thought to himself, I just don't know if I can go back. Mary was the one who was good at doing these things. Mary was the one who was good at talking to people. I don't know what to do, he said to the wind. And then he heard a fluttering of wings. And he found himself face to face with a sulphur-crested cockatoo. Bill didn't even have it in him to shake a fist. He just looked up and said once more, I don't know what to do. Right? Go. And keep on going. And so Bill went. And he kept on going. And as the weeks went by, his game got better. As the months went by, he even made himself a few new friends. And as the years went by, he realised that Mary was right. Of course, Mary was right. There were times he would look across at an empty chair and he would feel that emptiness to his bones. But as Mary had said, you know, Bill, you can feel two things at the same time, sometimes even more. And as he felt that emptiness, but was surrounded by the chatter of his children and his grandkids bouncing, and yes, even the noisy cockatoos, he'd just think of her as she'd say, you can feel two things at the same time, sometimes more. And he worked something else out, something for himself, that you can find a kind of peace, even when it's not very quiet at all.
Oh, thank you so much, Jill. That was absolutely gorgeous. And we're so glad you got to share it with us this evening. We are getting close to the end of our concert for World Storytelling Day. I know it's so terrible, but luckily there are still 4 tellers left. So it's, I'm pre-warning the ending, but you've got a little time to go. I'm going to pass over to Alan, who is here in space.
Okay. Hi, everyone. I'm a sucker for a romantic love story. and this is a true one. It's the story of the English writer Hilaire Belloc. He was actually born in France in 1870, and the correct French pronunciation of his name would be Hilaire, but the family moved to England when he was a toddler, so he lived in England for almost his entire life, so he was known as Hilaire. And he was quite an extraordinary man. He was a very famous orator and debater. He was a poet, a sailor, a satirist, a prolific letter writer, a soldier, political activist, member of parliament, mostly remembered as a writer. He wrote over 150 books, including many for children. And one of his children's books, Cautionary Tales for Children, has never been out of print since it was published in 1907. I'm going to read you one of his poems. And the reason this one is significant to me is that I was given this poem to read when I was in grade 4 at school, so I was about 9 years old, and my task was to copy it out onto a big sheet of paper and then draw a picture to go with it. It's called the microbe. The microbe is so very small you cannot make him out at all, but many sanguine people hope to see him through a microscope. His jointed tongue that lies beneath 100 curious rows of teeth, his 7 tufted tails with lots of lovely pink and purple spots, on each of which a pattern stands composed of 40 separate bands. His eyebrows of a tender green, all these have never yet been seen. But scientists who ought to know assure us that they must be so. Ah, let us never, never doubt what nobody is sure about. Now, why an educated man would have chosen to question the findings of science when microbial life had been observed under microscopes for 200 years before he wrote this poem is another story. And in fact, all of those achievements of Hilaire Belloc are not what I'm here to tell you about tonight. The story I want to tell you is the story of his courtship and marriage. In 1889, when he was 19 years old, he met a young American woman travelling in England, and they very quickly fell passionately in love. They spent all the time they could together while she was in England, but that was only a few weeks, and then she and her family returned to America. And after she had left England, they continued to keep in touch by letter. They wrote to each other, and they did that for 2 years. And then in 1891, he decided he had to see her again. So one problem, he had no money. So he sold most of his possessions, scraped together enough money to pay for a steamship passage to New York, across the Atlantic Ocean. So he arrived in New York with hardly any money left. The reason he gave his family, he was going to visit their relatives who lived in Philadelphia. But very soon his true intention was revealed, because after only a few days in Philadelphia, he set off across the United States. Because Elodie lived in San Francisco, 4,600 kilometres away, on the opposite side, the west coast of America. Pretty soon, his money ran out, so he couldn't travel by train anymore. So he did the only thing that he could do. He walked. Somehow he walked, he scrounged money to occasionally travel by train or coach, but a lot of that way, right across the United States, he walked. He would scrounge accommodation with farmers and ranchers, and in return for his night's lodging, he would recite poetry to them, and also do sketches of the family members, because in addition to all his other talents, he was a talented artist. Anyway, he made it. He made it to San Francisco and to Elodie's doorstep. And his letters that he wrote home at that period are full of joy and optimism, and he asked her to marry him. But Hilaire had a rival for Elodie's affections, and that rival was Jesus. Elodie, very strongly influenced by her mother, had a vision for her life, and that was to serve God by joining a religious order. And so she was in immense internal conflict. She loved Hilaire, but also had this grand vision for the purpose of her life. And her mother very strongly influenced her in this and was dead against any marriage. So after quite a short time, much shorter than the journey across the United States, she said no. She would not marry him. So heartbroken, he went back right across the United States, again with very little money, made it all the way back to New York and returned to England. And in his grief and disappointment, he threw himself into other activities to maintain his French citizenship, which he still held. He returned to France and fought in the French artillery. He went to Oxford, enrolled at Oxford and studied there, and started to establish his reputation as a debater and orator. And they continued to write letters to each other. So even though Elodie had this determination to join a religious order, she still obviously was in love with him, and they continued to write. They continued to write for 4 years. His love letters went across the Atlantic from the two lovers. Even when Elodie's mother died a little later in 1891, she still maintained that ambition. She still wasn't ready to drop that vision of joining a religious order. In 1895, she finally did it. Elodie joined the Sisters of Charity and became a nun. She lasted 1 month and decided that the cloistered life was not for her. So you can imagine this gave Hilaire renewed hope that maybe, after all, that his dream of marrying Elodie could come true. So in 1896, he tried again. This time, he'd established his academic career. He wasn't penniless anymore, so he travelled a little more comfortably. He was able to afford the steamship and then the train journey. Right, it's still a long way by steamship and train, all the way to San Francisco. When he got there, what he found was that Elodie was in very poor health. In fact, she seemed to be at death's door. The stress, the conflict, the disappointment for her of this dream of a lifetime of service to God not working out had completely devastated her. And when he got there, she seemed to be at death's door. And he was so shocked, devastated and disappointed. He collapsed too. So they were both very ill. But they were still young, still strong, and they both recovered. And a little later, in 1896, after a courtship lasting 6 years, they were married. And they were married for 18 years and had 5 children. And the reason that they were only married for 18 years was that in 1913, at the age of 45, Elodie died, probably from cancer, although that wasn't recognised at the time. After she died, Hilaire had her room sealed up and it was never reopened in his lifetime. He wore only black clothes for the rest of his life. And he was a prolific writer of letters. And from that time, all the letters that he wrote went out on paper with a black border, which was a traditional sign of mourning in that time. He lived another 40 years. And never remarried. Hilaire Belloc died in 1953, which is 5 years before I was born. That's the story.
Well, thank you so much for sharing that with us, Alan. That was beautiful. Again, I'm getting so enthralled in the stories. I'm not doing one of the key parts of my job, which is pre-warning people who are next. But I suspect, like Jill was ready, David Kidman across in Yorkshire is also going to be ready more or less at the drop of a hat to share what I'm going to guess is a ballad, because David Kidman always brings us beautiful ballads. Are you ready to tell something, or sing something, I should say, David?
Well, what I had planned was a short poem and then a very short song.
Perfect. Take it away.
Right. Okay. As you can see from my backdrop, the theme of light in dark is illustrated by the sight of the moon. I will say, before I start, thanks to everybody and to the organisers. This has been an absolutely inspirational session today, particularly. The poem is called The Dark of the Moon. It was written by a close friend, Nicola Carter, and then I'll follow it with a song. In the dark of the moon, the old woman sits. In silence, she tastes the bitterness of regret. Regrets for a friendship that withered through lack of care. She always meant to write or call, tomorrow or next week or next year. For the time she looked away for the homeless man. Not through lack of care, but because she cared too much. To look into his eyes would have hurt too much, cost too much. But for him, it would have been to acknowledge his humanity, that he had worth even in his darkest times. Regrets for the look of anguish and confusion on her son's face as she lashed out, throwing angry words born of frustration and too many broken nights, undeserved words that cannot be recalled. Sometimes the light blinds us. It is the darkness that shows who we truly are. Dark times are coming to our country, little by little like ink dropped into swirling water, reaching out feathered tentacles until all is black. Too many problems, too many people left behind, unregarded as the few prosper. A government that seems out of touch and unable to cope, hermetically sealed in its own bubble, looking inwards. A fertile ground for the chances. And on the horizon, the threat of war, unthinkable a decade ago, now a possibility. Soon we will be called upon to make a choice, to show who we truly are. The dark times are coming, but at the dark of the moon, the stars shine brighter. If I could wake to find you near me, suddenly here, out of the blue. If I could call and you could hear me, what would I say? Evangeline. If I could wake to find you sleeping here in my arms, out of the blue. If you could take my hand and keep me right here with you, Evangeline, my sunshine, light of my day, you're a star in the darkness, light years away. Stealing away in the night, pale and cold, lost in the light of the moon. If I could wake to feel the sunlight fall in my room, out of the blue. And if the day could break to bring me summer in bloom, Evangeline, my sunshine, light of my day, you're a star in the darkness, light years away, light years away. Light Years Away by Tommy Thompson of the Red Clay Ramblers.
Oh, that was beautiful. Thank you so much for sharing them together with us, David. They went together beautifully, and a beautiful nearly ends, not even quite the penultimate, nearly ends to this evening's concert. Now, because we are doing well for time, and I'm sure that we'd all love at least one extra story if we can do it, I'm going to throw across to Priti, who's got a really short Zen tale, who she's going to share with us, and then we'll finish up with Marty here in the space to I was going to say cancel out the concert. That's not what I meant. To finish up. I'm running out of words. Priti, you go take over. I'll work out what I'm saying later. Go.
Oh, that's wonderful. I'm so delighted I have a chance to chat with you. I wish I could have been there in person. I really made an attempt. Oh, well, these things happen. Well, there was once a monk who lived in a monastery high in a mountain far, far away. And this monk had a very, very serious problem. He hated the dark. Now, not in a dramatic, screaming at the shadows way, more in a, low-grade, constant, deeply committed, complaining way. Every evening, when the sun went down, he would sigh. Oh. And he would look at the shadows settling in the yard and over the valley, and he would whine. There it is again, the dark. And the other monks found this mildly annoying and then eventually exhausting. His teacher, an elderly woman named Bao, had learnt and heard this complaint approximately 4,000 times, and she had the patience of someone who had stopped counting. So one day, what she did was she went somewhere and she handed him her candle when he started whining. He lit it, and his face brightened, and literally, emotionally, physically, everything. This is much better. The next evening, the same thing happened. Darkness fell, and he sighed, and she handed him a candle. And he lit it, and he was happy. And this went on for an entire week. And now on the 8th evening, when the darkness arrived, and he opened his mouth to... Bao wasn't there. No candle. So he sat in the dark for a few seconds, and then he went and found her. Master, you forgot my candle. Did I? Yes, you give me one every evening. Do I? He stared at her, she stared back, and he really didn't know what to do because she wouldn't budge, and he went back and he sat in the dark. He grumbled a bit, and then mostly out of spite and grumbling, he went and found a candle and lit it himself, and he sat there. When he had calmed down after a little while, he noticed, oh, that flame is quite beautiful. The way it moved without going anywhere, the way it made everything just so mysterious, and the way it turned his own hands into something warm and strange. And he sat with it for quite a long time. In the morning, he went back to Bao. I understand now. The light was inside me all along. No, it was in the drawer on the 3rd cupboard in the left in the pantry. You just never looked. And here is the thing that you need to remember. You didn't need me to hand it to you. You found it when you were annoyed enough. He went away and he thought about this. The next day he came back. So the path to enlightenment is just mild irritation. If it works, it works. He became eventually a fairly decent monk. And he still complained about the dark. I mean, it was within him, ingrained. But now he knew where the candles were. And occasionally on clear nights, he would skip the candle entirely and just sit with the darkness for a while. And it turned out that the dark wasn't quite so bad as he had thought. It had just never been properly introduced.
Oh, that was excellent, Priti. Thank you so much. I am so glad we're able to sneak you in towards the end. And now, speaking of the end, before I run out of words, I'm going to pass across to Marty, who's going to take us out with song, as tends to be our custom for Newport Storytellers.
I've just had such a great night tonight, everyone, so thank you, one and all. On Sunday, my band, the Bobcats, we played at the Bush Dance, and we wrote a song and we did a dance, and it's all about being in a swamp. Not really being in a swamp, but the swamplands, the wetlands at Altona. So there's a little sing-along bit where you can go swamp, 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 swamp. All right, if you can remember that. So it goes like this. There's a place you can rest your heart. Swamp, 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 swamp. Yeah, that's it. A big sky place where we're all apart. Swamp, 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 swamp. That's about it for the first verse. Now leave it to me. And you can... Hang on. I wrote this. I wrote it. Oh, I'm looking up there. Sometimes I forget things. So I'll start again anyway. We've got that bit. There's a place you can rest your heart. Swamp, 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 swamp. A big sky place where we're all apart. Swamp, 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 swamp. Here we go. Ibis, egret, heron, all the big birds they are waiting. Catch the full moon rising as the light is fading. There's a place you can rest your eyes. Swamp, 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 swamp. I watch the swan go gliding by. Swamp, 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 swamp. You can let the time go walk for miles on a wander. Now your heart is open, growing slowly fonder. And this was a mozzie attack. Ah, mozzies! Ah! Which does happen sometimes, doesn't it? There's a place you can rest your ears. Swamp, 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 swamp. Swaying grasses have no feet. Swamp, 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 swamp. You might meet a new friend come from somewhere nowhere near ya. Like a little bird flew in from East Siberia. There's a place you can rest your heart. Swamp, 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 swamp.
Oh, thank you so much, Marty. That was a wonderful way to pose the concept. If anyone ever said, do you think someone can write a lullaby where the refrain is swamp, 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 swamp? I would have said no, but you have proven us all firmly wrong. That was a beautiful, beautiful way to end tonight's concert for World Storytelling Day. A big round of applause, and thank you to everyone who has joined us online and in person. A big thank you to Adrian and Darren, who've been running all the technology, which meant we could share all together. It has been a wonderful, wonderful night. I'm now looking, well, people online, I think I'm looking at the camera. I'm actually looking at Jackie, who's behind the camera. Just want to double check. She wants to take a screenshot to make sure we get a photo of everyone in one. So everyone, if you're online and you want to be in the, if you want to be in the picture, make sure your camera is on and you're looking and you're smiling. And if you don't, turn your camera off. And everyone in person, make sure you are looking towards that camera. That way you're also smiling. And I'm going to look towards this camera, so looking at smiling. You look that way, Jackie. Don't look at me. All right, everyone look at your camera, and we're going to do it on 3, 2, 1. We think it worked, and that's good enough. Give everyone and yourself a huge another round of applause. Thank you, everyone, for joining us for World Storytelling Day with the Newport Storytellers. My name has been and continues to be Emma Chandler. We will be back in May, not April. We skip April here at the Newport Storytellers. And if you'd love to see you all then or later in the year, take care, everyone. Tell lots of stories, and we'll see you in the soup. Good night.